everybody. Raise your hand if you've ever been to a Red Talk before, either this year or in the previous years. Awesome. Okay, so these talks are modeled after the popular TED Talks, if you've seen those on YouTube, and my mic keeps dying, so I'm just going to keep talking. If you've ever seen those on YouTube, these are modeled after the same. So our senior speech students get the opportunity to come up and speak for 8 to 15 minutes about a topic that they're passionate about, that they feel like they might be an expert on, and they share that expertise with you in an 8 to 15 minute talk. My one request to you, the students in the audience, is make sure your phones are silent right now and put them away. Faith has worked really, really hard on this talk, and I ask that you give 100% attention to her and not be worried about your phone or devices or anything like that. So please take care of that right now. At the end of the talk, there will be an opportunity for you to ask a couple questions. And then today we have a very special guest who some of you know, Mrs. Taylor, Jane Taylor, who's going to follow up with a story of her own after Faith's talk. Okay? Faith is, this is the first time I've ever had her this year. She's done almost the full cycle for English electives. She's taken drama, she's taken creative writing, and now she's in the speech class, which brings her up on the stage today. I'm very proud of her. So please welcome to the stage PCHS senior Faith Chapman.
Hello everyone. Sit back and relax. Today I want to tell you a story. My story is about you. When you were a child, your parents, your grandparents, maybe even a teacher, they'd pull you close, they'd open up a picture book, they'd read it to you. Maybe it was about an animal overcoming an obstacle or a kid learning a lesson about friendship. You would play make-believe games where you were the brave princess protecting her kingdom or the mighty superhero saving the city. This story is about me too. When I was a child, I read voraciously. I would create complex worlds in my head. Anything fictional I could get my hands on, I wanted. Stories and their worlds were my refuge when life was hard. And now I still use them to relax and hide away from the troubles of life. In the novel The Namesake, the author writes, that's the thing about books. They let you travel without moving your feet. And the magic of storytelling comes from its transportative ability. It doesn't matter who you are, you can experience 1,000 lives and 1,000 worlds. It transcends race and gender, nationality, socioeconomic position. What separates us doesn't matter. Now, I'm gonna stop myself before I get into some real nerdy stuff about cultural importance and psychological impact. I should explain, what even is a story? And I know you know what that word means. It's preschool level. We all understand it. So it should be easy to define, right? Well, not really. The Merriam-Webster dictionary has 8 separate entries for the word. That's fine, we'll just make up our own. I've been talking about reading this whole time, so a story is written fiction, like a children's book or a novel. But movies and TV shows and comic books, they're all stories, even though they use a visual medium. So it's a presentation of a fictional series of events. Easy, let's move on. Except for I'm forgetting that newspaper articles are also called stories. Now that I think about it, there's a lot of things that are factual that are considered a story. Biographies, documentaries, memoirs. There's a lot of things that count. Okay, so a story is a real or fictional series of events. That would include some songs I've listened to though, and most history teachers I've had were storytellers first. Entertainment, that's what a story is. A story is entertaining. Except when Linda spends 20 minutes talking at me about her 50 different cats, it's still a story even if I'm not having fun. This is hard. The definition is just too broad. Stories are everywhere. Unless, is the definition so broad because exist everywhere in our lives and our imaginations. They permeate every aspect of our culture. Sharing an anecdote with a friend, reading about the latest catastrophe in the news, even watching reality TV is consuming a story. Stories are everywhere, and they are everything. So, the simplest definition I can give you for our purposes today is that a story is an account of events, real or fictional. It can be anything as long as it makes you feel something or it teaches you a lesson. Stories are how we share our experiences with others. And I hope you've all experienced a truly phenomenal storyteller. It's a really special experience that you can be so thoroughly enthralled that by the end you're closer to the storyteller and your fellow listeners, that you're changed. Have any of you heard of the story 1001 Nights, also known as Arabian Nights? You've definitely heard of one of the stories in it, Aladdin, which is the basis of the Disney movie. And 1001 Nights is an anthology of local stories originating everywhere from India to the Middle East, even as far west as Greece. And it's existed at least since the Middle Ages, those believed to be much, much older. But today I want to talk about the framing device of this story. It is told like it is a series of tales being delivered by the amazing storyteller Sherazade. So the story goes. There's this king in Central Asia, King Shahryar, and while he's away, his wife cheats on him. And he's furious. He has her and her lovers executed, and it creates this deep vendetta against women within him. And so, every night, he marries a new woman, and in the morning, he has her executed. And this goes on until there's really no one left fit to marry the king. And so, the daughter of the vizier, Sherazade, comes up with a plan, and she asks to marry the king. And on her wedding night, she has her sister, Dunyazad, ask for one final story as their farewell to each other. And so, Sherazade begins telling her tale. She talks on and on throughout the night, and as the sun begins to rise in the east, she stops, right in the middle of the story. And the king, who's been listening fascinated this entire time, demands to know what the ending is. She says she can't. She is set to be executed. The king has duties to attend to. Her hands are tied. And so the king decides to stay her execution for another night so that he can hear the ending of this story. And so the next night, Sherazade finishes telling her story, and then she starts another one. She tells on and on, weaving this intricate tale throughout the night. And then, as the sun begins to rise in the east, she stops, right in the middle of it. And the king, who again has been listening, fascinated, demands to know what the ending is. She says she can't. It's dawn now. The king has duties to attend to. She is set to be executed. And so, again, the king stays her execution. This goes on and on for 1001 nights, hence the title of the collection. And on the 1000th tale, Sherazade finishes her story. She sits back, she tells the king she is out. She has no more stories to tell him. And then the king does something unexpected. He decides not to execute her. He takes her as his true wife because he was so moved by her passion and her power as a storyteller. And right there, that power is what stories have over us. We learn empathy from them. We learn humanity from them. We learn how to feel and how to interact. We learn how to love the world. Stories have the power to move mountains, to fell empires, and even to heal the blackened heart of a ruthless king. Well, I have to ask myself, why do we still look at stories like 1001 Nights centuries after it was written? Why do stories like Aladdin and Sinbad the Sailor still capture our imaginations? And it all goes back to one woman, armed only with her words, who faced down death for the chance to restore hope in this king. Scheherazade teaches us the power stories have to transmute our very souls. I want to share with you a line from the ancient Indian epic, the Mahabharata. In the introduction, it says, if you listen carefully, at the end, you will be someone else. One way we learn from stories is the development of empathy. Another, equally, if not more important way we learn from stories is the development of our minds, learning practical knowledge, deduction, reasoning. Whatever story you're consuming, it's going to have some sort of lesson in it. And actually, this is a key factor into why humans were so successful. For a moment, I want us to all think like anthropologists. Those are scientists that study humans and their cultures. Why were proto-humans so successful? I'll turn it out to you. Does anyone know what trait is most associated with Homo sapien dominance? Daniel. Yes, thank you. That is very good, and it is true, but it actually goes a lot deeper than that. It goes to the very way our brains manipulate and utilize knowledge. Humanity's ecological niche requires us to have something called improvisational intelligence. In other words, people have to be able to gain knowledge through experimentation, exploration, and examination in order to survive. We had to develop to remember and utilize knowledge outside of the situations it was learned in. And this is amazing, that we can use deductive reasoning over instincts like most animals, but we can't learn all the necessary information for survival from first-hand experiences alone. We have to learn from others, and that is revolutionary. We can take information communicated to us by others, extrapolate those insights, and then apply them to problem solve in completely unrelated situations. And this is where storytelling comes in. We use it to communicate our knowledge to one another. Look at any culture in any time or place, and it has some sort of storytelling tradition. And throughout history, this has been our key to survival as a species. I want to look at an example. Primitive humans, they would share their accounts of hunting trips, stories with each other. And that way, as a group, they could accumulate knowledge on animal behaviors and movement patterns, which then let them develop better hunting strategies. And this ensured the success of the rest of the tribe. And ancient humans weren't the only ones to do this. You do, every single day, most of you in this very building. Do you think mathematicians that were alive before the development of algebra were any dumber than the average high school student? They weren't. The only difference between then and now is that humans have accumulated more, have amassed more collective knowledge. We can understand in 2 years what it took these ancient mathematicians their entire lives to develop. I find the science behind storytelling just utterly fascinating. But it actually goes a lot deeper for me personally. There's 2 major, very personal reasons why storytelling is so important to me. For one, I associate storytelling with spending time with my family. My childhood is littered with memories of playing make-believe with my sisters. We were everything from witches to monster hunters to queens. I've sat around so many campfires listening to my dad with assorted aunts and uncles tell stories about their childhoods, their teen years, distant relatives I only really knew from their tales. And my one sister and I, we can still spend hours discussing, analyzing, and creating stories with each other. And the second reason is that fictional characters are some of my oldest friends. And if you can't tell, I'm a bit of a nerd. So in elementary school, I had some trouble making friends. And during this kind of lonely time period, I really fell in love with reading. Book characters were there to keep me company. They could help me ignore my problems just for a little bit. And this is a habit I still keep to this day. Now, I could go on and on for hours about what stories mean to me personally. Don't worry, I've held you here long enough. I won't. Before I wrap things up, I do want to leave you with one last thing. I've talked about the emotional learning experience that you can get from stories. I've talked about how we evolved to tell stories to one another. And I've shared with you the sheer abundance of stories within our culture, how they pervade every nook and cranny of it. For years, philosophers have been asking themselves, what makes us human? What separates us from the monkey in the tree or the bird in the sky? And I believe it's the fact we tell stories. It's the way we tell stories. They're so ubiquitous to the human experience. You cannot find a person or a place that does not have one, no matter where, when, what language, if it's in language at all. People are telling each other stories. We couldn't have developed our culture or our society without them. They are everywhere in the most literalist sense of the word. Stories are what make us human. And I think that is beautiful. Now that I've shared with you the story behind stories, it's time for you to go out and to write your own. Thank you.
Hey guys, give it up one more time for Faith Chapman. Questions. Does anybody from the audience have a question for Faith? Don't everybody jump at once. Okay, I see one in the back. Yes.
So, throughout your red talk, you referenced several works of literature. What led you to choose each one that you referenced?
So the major one I talked about, 1001 Nights, is because of its framing device is so unique. The idea of a series of what amounted to folk legends before they were collected together, being told by this woman and the power that she has, it really spoke to me. I thought it was really interesting, and so I wanted to include it in my talk. And do I reference anything else? Oh, I referenced a couple quotes also, and again, I just felt those really fit with the theme of the story I'm telling about stories.
Okay, one more question? Yes.
What would you say is the story or book that defines you as a person?
The story that defines her as a person?
Yeah. What's your favorite story?
What's my favorite story? That is a very good question. And it's also a hard one because I read and consume so many stories. I have a lot that I really love. I would say the one that is most meaningful to me and really defined my story consumption was The Lightning Thief by Riordan. It is the first book in the Percy Jackson The Olympian series. I read it when I was in 3rd or 4th grade, and it really that's the book that got me into reading. And it means a lot to me. Another story that means a ton to me is, I play Call of Cthulhu, which is like D&D, Dungeons and Dragons, it's that kind of similar genre of games. But the people I play with, we focus more on the role play aspect, and we really find it fascinating to look at how characters' interpersonal relationships work. And so that's one of my favorite stories, that campaign I've been in, because I helped create it. I've been playing in it for 2.5 years. The campaign itself has been going on for 3, and it means a lot to me because I had such a big hand in creating it with my friends, and it's something I can really enjoy all the time.
Okay, so guys, I'm an English teacher. That was one of the most in-depth looks at storytelling I've ever seen. It's tough to convey how proud I am of Faith. So we're going to do a quick 2-minute changeover here. Given Faith's topic or subject of her talk, you know, Port Clinton's most renowned storyteller used to be a teacher here at Port Clinton City Schools. So we'll be back in 2 minutes because Jane Taylor, Mrs. Taylor, is going to tell everyone here a little story.